I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings, Arnold.
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
This episode of Bodybuilding History is brought to you by BodybuildingLegendsShow.com. I'm your host, John Hansen. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about the 1969 NABBA Mr. Universe contest. Now, the NABBA Mr. Universe contest started in 1950 when Steve Reeves beat Reg Park. So this contest, taking place 19 years later, was one of the biggest NABBA Universe contests ever. The NABBA Universe is always held in London, England. 1969, the NABBA Universe contest was held on September 19th and 20th, 1969 in London. They held the prejudging at the Royal Hotel on the 19th, and then the finals at the Victoria Palace in London on the 20th. So as always, the NABBA Universe contest is held in an amateur division and a professional division. Now, the professional division didn't give out any cash prizes. They just determined that professionals were those bodybuilders who made a good portion of their income from promoting products or guest posing or something involved with bodybuilding. And they had close to 70 competitors in both the amateur and professional. So the NABBA Universe was still the biggest event in the world. It was still bigger than the Mr. Olympia at that time. They used 14 judges to judge the NABBA Universe contest. Most of them were from England, but they also had some judges from France, Belgium, Italy, the West Indies, and the United Arab Republic. In 1969, they actually had competitors coming in from Japan and from the Arab state of Jordan. So this contest was getting bigger and bigger every year, and I believe in 1969 they had their biggest event ever. And when they had the finals at the Victoria Palace on the 20th, they packed in over 2,000 competitors. So this was really a big event. So let's start with the amateur division. In the short class, which was class 3, Franco Colombo was the winner. Franco had taken second the year before to Wilf Sylvester from England. And this was the year that Franco actually moved to the United States. So he was really improving his physique. In second place was a bodybuilder from Austria named Adolf Zigner. Now, to show you how massive Adolf Zigner was, and this is back in 1969, he was 5'6" and he weighed 215 pounds. Really massive dude, but he just had kind of a blocky physique, wide waist. And then a competitor from Egypt named Mohammed Hamdi was in third place. Now, the medium class was the toughest class in the amateur division that year. They had over 24 competitors representing 15 different countries. So it was really, really tough. Boyer Coe from America won the Mr. America that year, and he flew over to England, which usually happened. Usually the guy that won the AAU Mr. America would immediately go over to London, England to compete in the Mr. Universe. So Boyer was up against Roy Callender, who used to live in Barbados but was now living in England, and Albert Beckles, who was also from the Caribbean, and he was also living in England. Now, Roy and Albert are both excellent bodybuilders, and these guys obviously went on to become IFBB pro bodybuilders, and they won many professional titles. So they are legends in the sport. But back in 1969, these guys were both amateurs and working their way up the ladder. And Albert had beaten Roy on several occasions. So on this occasion, Roy beat out Albert. Roy Callender, of course, had a really thick physique. And Albert, of course, one of the greatest bodybuilders ever. Both really great bodybuilders. So that goes to show you how great Boyer Coe looked that year. So he would beat both of these guys. In fact, Boyer got all first place votes from the judges, except for 2 judges who voted for Roy Callender. Lars Lund from Norway was in 4th place, and Elias Petsis, who was another great bodybuilder from South Africa, he took 5th place. So this was a really, really tough division. Now we go into the tall class, which was class 1, and Jim Hayslop, who won the Mr. America in 1968, the year before, he did not win the Mr. Universe that year because he lost to Dennis Tenorino. So he came back in 1969 to try to win it again, and he did win the tall class. He beat out Frank Richard, another excellent bodybuilder. Frank won the Mr. Britain contest that year. 3rd place went to Karl Canrath from Austria. Karl used to compete with Arnold Schwarzenegger when they were younger, and unfortunately, Karl passed away just recently in 2020. So Carl passed away at the age of 77. But in this contest in 1969, he was in third place. Walter O'Malley from Ireland, another great bodybuilder, he was in fourth place. And Helmut Reidmeier from Germany, another guy that used to compete with Arnold back in the day, he took fifth place. So this was a really tough class. They had about 14 competitors, but Jim Hayslop with that fantastic structure. Jim had like a Steve Reeves type structure, real wide shoulders, small waist. Many people felt that Jim, if he would have continued, would have gone all the way to the top, maybe even winning the Mr. Olympia contest. This is how good Jim Hayslop was. So in the overall, it came down to Franco, Boyer Coe from the medium class, and Jim Hayslop from the tall class. And it was really, really tight between Boyer Coe and Jim Hayslop. Now, when they used to compete in the Mr. America for years, Jim Hayslop would always beat Boyer Coe. So finally, Boyer Coe won the Mr. America contest in 1969 after Jim had won it in 1968. And Boyer got his revenge tonight at the 1969 Mr. Universe when he beat Jim Hayslop. And unfortunately, Jim was so disappointed that after this contest, he never competed again. He just stopped competing in bodybuilding competitions. So it's really a shame because, as I said, Jim Hayslop, with an incredible structure, incredible genetics, the potential this guy had was amazing. It's really too bad that he didn't keep competing and maybe go on to the IFBB and compete in Mr. Olympia one day. But unfortunately, this was the last contest for Jim Hayslop, and Boyer Coe, looking amazing, took first place in the 1969 NABBA Amateur Mr. Universe contest. They also gave out some special awards at the amateur division. Franco won Most Muscular Award. Roy Callender, who took second place to Boyer, he won the Most Improved Bodybuilder Award of the night. So that just goes to show you how great Roy looked. As I said, he beat Albert Beckles, which was a huge victory. And then Boyer Coe won Best Poser. And Boyer Coe was a great poser. He went on to become a great professional bodybuilder. And I remember seeing him at the Mr. Olympia contest where he was always one of the best posers of the night. So those were the three special awards they gave out at the end of the amateur division. Now, the pro division was broken up into two classes, the short class and the tall class. I think the short class went up to 5'8", and then over 5'8" was the tall class. So they had 18 competitors competing in the pro division that year, which was a lot. The short class went to an excellent bodybuilder from England. His name was John Citroni, and John had also won this class in the pro division the year before in 1968. John was an amazing bodybuilder. In fact, this guy competed all the way up until his 50s, and he's a legend in the sport. He's unbelievable, and he always stuck with the NABBA Universe. He never went over to the IFBB. But John Citroni took first place again in 1969 in the short class. John beat out a bodybuilder named Kazman Yazbek from Syria, who was in second place, and Lodi Luigi from Italy was in third place. But John was a strong winner in the short class in the pro division. Now, in the tall class, this was really where the tough competition was. 22-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger, only 22, wins his second pro division in a row. He won the first pro division in 1968 at only 21 years old. He won the amateur division at the NABBA Universe at 20 years old in 1967. So this was Arnold's third NABBA Mr. Universe victory in a row. And the difference between Arnold from 1968 to 1969 is incredible. 1968, of course, was the year that he moved to America. And in that 1 year in America, Arnold learned all about dieting, all about the best training techniques, and the improvement he made in 1 year from 68 to 69 is incredible. He was probably 15 pounds lighter, but he was so cut up, his legs were improved. He really looked amazing. So he dominated this division easily at 22 years old. He beat out Dennis Tenorino, who was in second place. Now, interestingly, Dennis and Arnold clashed 2 years before in the amateur division. That was the year that Dennis won the Mr. America contest in the AAU, and then he came over to London and competed against Arnold, who was coming in from Germany, Austria, and Arnold beat him at 20 years old, and Dennis was only 21. So these guys were both really young. Now they had a rematch 2 years later in the pro division, but Arnold beat him easily. The improvement Arnold made, like I said, from 68 to 69 was just so incredible. He was definitely one of the greatest bodybuilders in the world. Now, another interesting fact was this NABBA Universe contest took place 1 week after Arnold competed in the IFBB Mr. Universe and the IFBB Mr. Olympia. He dominated that IFBB universe. He won, and he beat out Franco, and he beat out Rick Wayne, and he won almost all the body part awards. He even won best legs. And then that same night, he went up against Sergio, and he lost. Sergio beat him at the first Mr. Olympia. That was Sergio's third Mr. Olympia victory, and Arnold took second place at 22 years old. But he got his confidence back because 1 week later, he traveled to London, and he wins his third NABBA Mr. Universe contest. Now, in third place in the pro division in the tall class was Serge Nubret. Now, Serge is originally from Guadeloupe, but he was now living in France, and he had a great physique, very beautiful physique, very big, very thick, but he wasn't quite as shredded as he would become later in the 70s. In the 1960s, Serge was still a bigger, bulkier bodybuilder, but he really became very aesthetic and shredded as the 70s wore on. But at this point, Serge was in third place, Dennis Tinerino was in second place, and Arnold, of course, dominated. He got all first place votes from all 14 judges. John Bubb from England was in fourth place. So in the overall, they didn't just have the short class and the tall class compete against each other. The judges picked who they thought were the best bodybuilders overall. So Arnold took first, of course. Dennis Tinerino was in second. Serge was third. And then John Citroni, who won the short class, he was actually in fourth place overall. And then at the end of the pro division, Arnold Schwarzenegger won also the Best Poser Award. So that just goes to show you how great Arnold was becoming. At only 22 years old, he was so much more professional than he was just a year ago. The improvement was staggering. So as you can see, another amazing competition at the 1969 NABBA Mr. Universe. Again, look at this lineup. You've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dennis Tinerino, Serge Nubret, John Citroni, Franco Colombo, Boyer Coe, Jim Hayslop, Roy Callender, Albert Beckles, and Frank Richard. I mean, what a lineup. This is an incredible, incredible lineup of bodybuilders. Of course, many of these guys would go on to become professional bodybuilders. And of course, you got two future Mr. Olympia winners, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Colombo in the lineup. So just an amazing lineup of bodybuilders. One of the greatest NABBA Mr. Universes in the history of the sport. So that was the 1969 NABBA Mr. Universe. All right, if you like this episode of the bodybuilding history, be sure to subscribe to my channel because I got a lot more coming up. And check out my website, bodybuildinglegendshow.com. This is John Hansen. I'll see you next time.